Now, I understand that it is always easier, as per human nature, to be negative about something, to find the problem in something as opposed to finding the solution in something. And this definitely applies here in the United States when it comes to Congress. You know, they continuously see record low approval numbers and widespread dissatisfaction over the work of Congress as a whole. People think that they're all crooks, that they're all grimy, they're all sleazy, they're all slimy, they're the problem, and skip and whoop-de-woo. And I just wonder at some point in time in stupid America, when is it going to stop being about just identifying the problems and bitching about the problems and complaining about the problems, blaming other people for the problems? And when are we going to transition to actually trying to solve the problems and fixing the problems and doing something to affect positive change? Here's an idea, and this is just a radical idea. I understand this. But if you don't like Congress, you don't like your congressman, you don't like a Democrat, you don't like the Republicans, you don't like this, and you don't like that about your politicians, if you don't like the crooks, then don't vote for them. If you don't like what they stand for, don't vote for them. If you think it makes no difference between a Democrat or a Republican, that they're all crooks, then don't vote for any fucking one of them. This just astounds me here in stupid America. And for so many years, we complain about the same fucking things, and yet at the same time, do the same damn things that produce the same damn results to go and do the same damn thing again and expect any real positive change to be affected or to occur. If you don't like the representation that you have, then stop voting for it. And newsflash, by and large, it does not matter if it is a Republican. It does not matter if it is a Democrat. They will take divergent paths to ultimately achieve the same result, which we already know what those results are. And those results are not good for this country and for us as American citizens. If you're tired of these crooks, then stop voting for them. If you are tired of these crooks, stop buying into their bullshit, stop believing their bullshit, and start actually, God forbid, holding them accountable for the crap that actually occurs in Washington, D.C. But it goes beyond that. How about actually having some standards? How about actually having some expectations? How about actually giving these people that are going to represent you something to hold accountable for, something that they have to answer for, something to actually do. Not sit there and talk about divisive wedge issues that aren't going to accomplish anything, that all they're going to do is put one side against the other and nothing fucking gets done. Find those candidates that actually sit there and will affect the real positive change, that will actually represent the people, the constituents that have elected them there, not the special interests, not big corporations, not big banks, not these other fucking criminals, but the people that are supposed to be represented because they are the ones electing these representatives to, oh my God, represent them in Washington, D.C. And it doesn't matter at this point. You've got 435 House members, 100 Senate members. That's what, 535 congressmen. They're pretty much all crooked. It doesn't matter which party. If you're a Democrat or a liberal and you think all Republicans are the only ones that are crooked, you're a tool. If you're a Republican and you think all the Democrats are evil and that they're so bad compared to your guys, then you're fucking stupid. It is time for America to stop being so stupid and falling into this stupid America type bullshit. I propose some solutions here. Here's about the thing first and foremost. Since when did it become the rule that you basically only had two parties to vote for? Why should you have to only choose between a Republican or a Democrat? Why is it okay that we only have two options? Why is it okay that we are allowing two parties, both directly and indirectly, to control everything, to play lockstep with each other, to make sure they keep everything else out, so that way they protect the status quo and they protect themselves and their interest and fuck you over the American taxpayer? What happened to citizens having courage? What happened to the government being of the people, by the people, and for the people? Not of, by, and for the special interests, the big banks, the big corporations, big oil, and everybody fucking else. Evil freaking governments in other countries, and all the while our people starve. Our people can't get the health care they need. All people can't get this, and our people can't get that. And yet we sit there and all we do is bitch about these congressmen that we continue to put the same type of people in place, expecting the results to be anything fucking different. Here's some ideas of what you should look for in a congressman. Here's some ideas of the type of people that might not actually be crooks when they got to D.C. Here are some of the standards that you should expect from them. Some of the standards that you could take them to task for. Some of the standards that you can hold them accountable to. That if they actually met these standards and you were actually holding them accountable to those standards and therefore they actually did meet those standards and achieve these goals, it would affect some real positive change in this country, I guarantee it. Want to know what type of candidates to vote for? I say this. Vote for candidates that first off support constitutional amendments for congressional term limits. A maximum of 8 consecutive years in the House, not to exceed 8 total years, which means 4 total terms. If they serve 3 terms for 6 years and then they get voted out, they have one last time to come back for 2 years and then that is it. This whole notion of career politicians, people that spend more time in Congress, more time in Washington, D.C. than they do in their own district, in their own constituency is absolutely ridiculous. How are they supposed to represent the people if they end up spending more time of their lives in D.C.? That makes absolutely no sense to me. In terms of the Senate, a maximum of 2 terms in the Senate, and they must be non-consecutive. You see this with certain states in terms of the governor's office. You have term limits. They can only serve 1 4 or 6-year term, but maybe they can serve a total of 2 terms, but it can't be consecutive. Again, this whole notion of these senators over the years, like the Strom Thurmonds and the Robert Byrds and the Rockefellers and the Sessions, and I can go on and on and on and on. All these senators that spend 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years in office, 50 years in D.C., whose interest are they representing? Are they representing yours, or are they representing their interest and the interest of those that support them, which, by the way, aren't you, the taxpayer, the actual voters? If we don't find officials and elected representatives to put these type of constitutional restrictions on term limits, we have these term limits for the presidency. Why don't we have these term limits for the House and the Senate? This makes absolutely no sense. It's like we elect people to sit there and just magically do it out of the goodness of their heart. You really think any member of Congress, once they get there, by and large, is going to want to sit there and restrict the amount of easy money they can make from working, 4 months out of the year and getting all this money from special interest groups and lobbyists and lobbying groups, so that way after they leave, they can go work for a freaking lobbyist group, become a lobbyist themselves? They're not going to stop themselves ever unless you give them a reason to stop. You give them this expectation. You hold them to this standard. There must be some sense here, and we must constitutionally impose term limits on both houses of Congress. If it's good for the president, it's good for Congress, in my opinion. We must only vote for candidates who pledge to abolish the Patriot Act and related legislation. Anytime that you talk about sacrificing freedoms and civil liberties and constitutional rights in the sake of security, you deserve neither and will have neither. That's a very bad paraphrasing of Ben Franklin, I understand. But in that post 9/11 furor, the Patriot Act was allowed to be crammed down the throats of this country, which circumvented the First Amendment, circumvented the Fourth Amendment, circumvented the Fifth Amendment, and other amendments too. Is a very big concerning problem when it comes to the law of our land, which is supposed to be the United States Constitution. And the other related legislation, reining in the things like the National Security Agency, getting rid of Homeland Security, eliminating the drone programs, eliminating warrantless wiretap searches and seizures, and detentions of enemy combatants without ever bringing charges or without ever bringing them to trial. These are the things that must stop. And these are the type of people that you should vote for, those type of people that actually believe in, defend the Constitution. That's part of their freaking oath when they take office. That's part of the reason you're electing them, is to represent your rights, to represent your interest, represent you as a constituent and a constituency. And the best way to do that is to defend the law of the land, which is the United States Constitution. You must only vote for candidates that take no corporate money in their campaign that they can control. They should not be seeking big corporate donors. This whole thing of Citizens United and unlimited corporate money can flow into these campaigns. We know what a disaster this is. We know what type of negative consequences we haven't even begun to felt in this country because of that ridiculous Supreme Court decision. As a result, we must find a way to circumvent and get the corporate money out of the campaigns. Obviously, elected officials are going to care more about the people that contribute more to their cause and more to their campaign. Well, if you level the playing field for all and you eliminate that corporate money, then that corporation is no more important than the people. We need to find candidates and only vote for candidates, whether they are Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Green Party, I don't give a fuck, that support a balanced budget amendment and will fight to institute a balanced budget amendment. How ridiculous is it that our government unconstitutionally is able to borrow us into debt and make us slaves to our debt without any authorization to do so? There must be standards, and there must be something for our government to be held accountable to. They are there to supposedly represent us, and we need to make sure they are representing us. And by ensuring that every single year they have to deliver a balanced budget, which could eventually lead to budget surpluses, which eventually could lead to all types of benefits for this country, for us not to support that and not to expect and demand that our representatives fight for that and believe in that is absolutely ludicrous and does nothing but continue to proliferate the same problems that we've had in this country for years. We must institute a balanced budget amendment. Our fiscal health is vital to our long-term health and security as a country. We cannot have congressmen that are selling us out to big banks, the industrial military complex, big oil, big corporations, and overseas. No. We need people that believe that if we're expecting our citizens to pay their bills and not rack up debts, we need to set that gold example. We need to be that moral standard and say, you know what, people, you can't be doing it. And you know why? Because we're doing it ourselves. How can the government sit there like the IRS sits there and comes after you if you don't pay your taxes? You know, how the fuck can they sit there in any right mind and do that when the government can't pay their own bills? How does that make any sense? It sets a terrible precedent and example. We need to only vote for candidates that support ending the Federal Reserve and the fractional banking system that creates these fraudulent financial bubbles, that creates this scheme, this game where we borrow money as debt. That way we automatically are in debt. We are paying interest on the money that we borrow in terms of our currency. The fact that a bank could take $1,000 and through the fractional banking system make it $9,000, leading to, guess what? Ever since the Federal Reserve and the fractional banking system has been in place in this country, leading to a decreasing value of the dollar and increasing prices. Basically inflation through the fucking roof. Look at the devaluing of our dollar over the past 100+ years as we went away from the gold standard and went to this fractional banking reserve system. And we went to the Federal Reserve. There must be support for ending this, because as long as the Federal Reserve and the fractional banking system is in place, it is too important to our economy and the way it is currently constructed for any type of real change or any real positive things to be affected. We have to find people that recognize this and understand that these people are making us slaves to our debts. These organizations are playing with our money and making us slaves to our debts, and they are making a killing while we are getting screwed, and this must stop. We must only vote for people who believe that they should be representing the people and not lobbyists. And therefore, they must make it illegal to work for any type of lobbying organization as a lobbyist of any kind or any type of employment with a lobbyist organization after or before their career as a politician, as a congressman, whether it be a House of Representatives member or a Senate member. We need to get the lobbying out of politics. We need to get the special interest out of politics. And the only way to do that is to eliminate corporate money in the campaigns, make it equal across the board. We must get rid of this whole thing of, well, after you sat there and did our work for all these years, we're going to bring you into the lobbyist family. Who the fuck's interests are being represented here? I know not mine, and I know not any of you as an American citizen. And we must also vote for candidates, in my opinion, that support actually having Congress work. 9 months work schedule, 5 days per week. You know, actually, instead of working 120 days a year, maybe working closer to 200 or 220 days a year. They're actually getting paid by us to do a job. They need to do that fucking job. There are so many other things I could talk about here, but these are some of the basics. These are some of the fundamentals that if we actually had people that would go there and affect these type of changes, put in place a balanced budget amendment, impose congressional term limits, overthrow the Patriot Act and related legislation, end the Federal Reserve and the fractional banking system, make it illegal to work with a lobbyist group either before or after or even during your time as a congressman, then imagine how much more our will is being represented by our elected representatives. Imagine how much it becomes about the good of the country, not the good of a few. If you don't like these crooks, then don't vote for them anymore. Vote for people that are going to affect the real positive, necessary changes to make stupid America a better place for all.